Hey guys, welcome into today's video. Today we're going to be testing out the new Halo Glow Beauty Wands from e.l.f. I almost dropped them there. I am looking super pasty. I've done all of my makeup except my blush, my contour, I guess, and my highlighter. So let's go over these today. We are going to do side-by-side tests against the ones from Charlotte Tilbury. I am already going to tell you, like, I'm looking at these and they're not going to be the exact same shades because this one in the lightest shade from e.l.f. is much darker than the contour one from Charlotte Tilbury. We are definitely going to test these dupes side by side, so let's just hop right into it. It was a short and brief introduction. I am dying to get these on my face. I'm looking at my reflection and I'm like, man, I really need some texture, some dimension on my face. So I did pick these up from the e.l.f. website. They are available on Ulta's website currently, and these do retail for $9 a piece on both the e.l.f. website and the Ulta website. There is no additional markup. I am really excited to try these. I'm loving the shade range. Let's talk a little bit about them. So in the contour wand, I did pick up the lightest one, which is Fair Light. They do come in 5 different shades. The next lightest shade is actually Light Medium, which is very, very warm. So the only one that they have for Fair Light is a very cool toned, very kind of like ashy colored contour. These are vegan and cruelty free. It says to gently squeeze one and use the cushion tip applicator to apply to your hairline, temples, side of your nose, hollows of your cheeks and jawline, then blend in color with your fingertips, or use the e.l.f. Putty Bronzer brush for a naturally sculpted look. So pretty simple, pretty to the point. These already do have some reviews on Ulta's website. There's already one shade that's sold out here, which is the light to medium shade. It is totally out of stock. These all were made in China and they do have a 12-month shelf life. So let's talk about the blush. The blush is fully sold out on Ulta's website right now. These do come in 4 shades. I picked up mine. I think it's probably the lightest one. This one was Candlelit, which is supposed to be like a light peach, and it really is the only one that's like this light, and it's definitely not giving me like peach vibes necessarily right away in the packaging, so we'll have to see when we get it onto our cheeks. These I can already tell are going to be like the dupes for the original Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Light Wands, the high blush, because these look like they have a shimmery finish just like this one, and I do have both. I have 3 shades of the matte, and then I have one in Pinkgasm here in the shimmery finish. So I actually feel like, just looking at it, because you do get like a clear piece here so you can kind of see the shade in the e.l.f. one, that it's going to be a very similar color to the Pinkgasm, unless this pulls more peach than it seems to appear here. I actually wish there were more shades in the blush, so hopefully they expand. I think that right now 3 of the shades look kind of dark or deep. 2 of the shades for the highlighting wand are sold out already. There are 3 shades here in total. This one is the champagne one, so this is Champagne Pearl, which is Champagne Campaign is what the shade name is called. This one is currently sold out on Ulta's website, and the Pinky Rose one that is called Rose Quartz is sold out. The only one that is available is the Liquid Gold shade, which is just a full gold shade. So let's go ahead and swatch these all side by side to Charlotte, and then we'll start applying them one by one. The hard part about the contour wand is definitely going to be that it's nowhere near the same shade as Charlotte, so we're testing mostly formula. My chief complaint about the contour wand from Charlotte in the fair to medium one was that it's really, really dark, and I think that it would have benefited fairer skinned people to have a lighter shade in their line, just because this is really, really dark, and having something for fair to medium instead of just fair to light seems like a pretty big jump. I've said that many times on my channel, so I know that we're not going to get a similar color. This one is much, much smaller. Like, I mean, for $9, like, I get it. This is 0.33 fluid ounces. This one is actually 0.41 fluid ounces. Oh no, 0.4 fluid ounces. So in terms of how much product comes in, these 2, like, it's not much less. And this is a like twist off cap. So that's actually kind of nice. It actually doesn't look like it closes like Charlotte's. Like the one from Tarte definitely mirrors the open and close mechanism that Charlotte has, but these don't appear to. So I'm just gonna squeeze it, see how much product comes out. It's pretty good. I like, honestly, that this is a little guy. This is a much thinner like sponge or smaller sponge applicator. because I just think that it's easier when applying it because you can be more precise with where you're applying the actual product. So yeah, it's a much more neutral gray tone than the Charlotte. So obviously you're not going to get like a shade dupe at all, but that might be a good thing simply because I think this is probably just too deep. I'm gonna kind of blend these in. I can already tell that this one is much creamier and it seems to have like more opacity. I just blended like both of these in, and the Charlotte one, I mean, it looks really nice. It doesn't look patchy like this when you get it onto the cheeks, but it's not holding its opacity the way that the one from e.l.f. is. It's just a much, honestly, like thicker formula. I can already feel that. But what I will say is that I can feel the e.l.f. one sitting on top of my skin a little bit more, and the Charlotte one is really good about sinking into the skin right away. And even on the back of my hand, the one from Charlotte was sinking into my skin much more than the e.l.f. one. It just appeared to like be sitting on top. I am literally just gonna be grabbing random brushes, so I don't even know what they are. Some of the ones that I'm gonna grab are like the e.l.f. ones, and I just think that they like do a really good job. But you know, this is the blush brush, this is the putty blush brush, and I think I'm gonna use this for one side, so I'm gonna be all over the place. I'm gonna do e.l.f. on the left side and Charlotte on the right. So I am gonna take this and just apply it to like the hollows of my cheek on my left side, because I want to test out like how the dry time, how quickly it dries, the blendability, that sort of thing. And I'm probably not gonna do any cutaways, you guys. I'm just gonna clearly like blend while on camera. Okay, so right away, it's picking up some of my foundation because my cheek just turned pink. And that's a sheer indication that it just sucked up the foundation a little bit. I like it though, like it never bothers me when a product does that because it's almost like a gradient. Like, it's clearly sculpting, but on top you're kind of getting, I don't know, like a little bit of a gradient. You're getting what looks kind of sun-kissed, but it pulled up the foundation. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it kind of pulled it up there. And this brush does not normally do that. It's nice though, like the shade is gorgeous, super blendable, loved that it didn't dry down too fast. I wanna do it down here as well. I love the fact that they have a very neutral gray tone for fair skin. And I even loved that in Flower Beauty's contour wands. I love the Tarte one. It definitely has more warmth and I consider that one a bronzer, but it wasn't too deep for the lightest shade that they had in their line. It's not like a dupe in terms of that it is a contour wand. It's more of a bronzer wand for me. Let's go ahead into the forehead now. And it's literally just the same amount of product. Like I didn't go back in. I don't know if this is supposed to go down, but like it kind of bounces up and down. Like I don't know, you probably can't see that, but it does a little bit. And for that reason, I'm wondering if this was supposed to go down or if that's just a mechanism so that like when you twist it, it fully closes. I'm gonna avoid blending and I'm gonna try and like bounce this in so it does not pull up the foundation on my forehead. I did apply this over top of powder, like I powdered my whole face. So that's how they sit on top of powder. I think the shade is probably too light to go for underpainting, like under my foundation. Besides, I never do that. I don't know if you guys do. I would say that a shade like this from Charlotte would be good for underpainting, but a shade this neutral from e.l.f. I probably wouldn't try because it's just not a dark enough shade. Beautiful. What do you guys think? That is it. Fully applied. There is nothing here. And that's the sculpted. I like it. I'm just gonna tell you, it pulled up the foundation right here, but just a little bit, and it could have been too, I was like blending pretty hard. So that is also part of it. I mean, take it for what it is. I am using like a brush that could have pulled some of it up, but it doesn't usually. This is not a brush that usually kind of pulls it up because it's pretty darn fluffy. Let's go into the Charlotte one now. This one, so much darker. So formula wise, I can already tell that Charlotte's is so much thinner. It sinks into your skin almost immediately. Whereas the e.l.f., I can like feel it sitting on top. It is beautiful, like it's giving a gorgeous look, but it's a thicker formula. And I've also said many times about the Charlotte Wands is that because I'm so fair, this shade is so dark, it tends to look muddy on me sometimes, or it can if I don't do a good enough job blending, or, you know, really just depending like what I'm pairing it with, what kind of blush I'm pairing it with, that sort of thing. And sometimes I like to, you know, kind of like sculpt out underneath the Charlotte's contour because it's so dark, and sometimes I take it too low. It's beautiful, but you can see like how much darker this is. Somebody for fair skin, I feel like we should have like an option to, well, just everybody should have options, but when you're making a range and you're trying to get everybody and be super inclusive, like making this the lightest shade for light skin tones, I don't know that I agree with it. So I think it's good. I think it's a neutral tone, I always have, but it's a little bit deep. I like this one. I like having like a cool toned, I call it like camel option, just something that's really, really neutral and not too gray. I have never taken the Charlotte to sculpt my chin before, so you guys are seeing what I'm seeing for the first time. I don't know if this is too deep, but because it blends so nicely or sinks into the skin so nicely, I'm not too worried about it. No, it looks good. Okay, let's go for the forehead. I'm again just using like what is left over on that little spongy thing. I'm going to push instead of like brush. Yeah, see how much darker this one is? Yeah, oof. I don't know, it's so dark sometimes. This is what I mean by like it can tend to look a little bit muddy, almost to the point where I would kind of want to powder over this because it's pretty darn dark. I don't always enjoy the Charlotte wand. I'm gonna have to powder like a little bit because it's looking maybe just a little too dark. The thing is, like, if you're looking on camera, it's nice, but if you're looking in real life, like, it's pretty darn dark. Okay, let's talk about the side-by-side in terms of, like, formula, just right off the bat. The formula, I've mentioned a couple of times now, you guys, that the one from e.l.f. is thicker. The one from Charlotte is a very, very thin, very fine formula that just immediately sinks into the skin. And that's why I think that it is so easy to blend and why it doesn't like get patchy when you're like blending it with any kind of brush. Do I prefer the e.l.f. one a little bit better? I think it was thick, but I even think that it was super easy to blend. But I will say though, that I think the e.l.f. one has like a little bit of shimmer, like a little bit of sheen to it. It's emphasizing a little bit of the texture on the left side of my face. Charlotte, nothing. Completely matte, totally sinks into the skin, no texture whatsoever. So that is the side-by-side for those contours. Let's move on into the blush. Okay, I've swatched both of the blushes. They're not the same shade. So again, with the contour, same thing. It's gonna be more of a formula thing. The e.l.f. one is still thicker. The Charlotte, very, very thin formula, blends into the skin like super easy. It just sinks into the skin. That's just the one very, very like unique, distinct thing that these beauty wands do from Charlotte's line. I don't think that this particular shade in the e.l.f. blush is actually like as opaque as like the contour was. I definitely think that it's a little bit more opaque when I start to blend it in than the Charlotte was. The same thing with the contour wand. The one in e.l.f. was Candlelit, which was the peachy one. Yeah, not exactly gonna have like the same shade. I'm actually thinking, because this is a more like sheer formula, that I'm gonna lay it on pretty thick. And I'm actually going to use their putty blush brush for the blending in of this. You know, I will say though, you guys, so that you know, the one from Charlotte that is more shimmery, I don't care for. I think that this kind of blush emphasizes too much of the texture on my cheeks. And so while I'm seeing all these companies come out with products that are like dupes because of the popularity that Charlotte had, one of my criticisms long before they started doing dupes with this product was that it was probably like too shimmery, too metallic of a finish for my everyday wear. And even though I loved the pigmentation and I liked that it sunk into my skin, it was just like really emphasizing the texture. That's what I found. So this one is doing the same thing. I have tested the Tarte one, and I think that it was more sheer than this, and I didn't like it. It was more metallic than it was actual pigment. So yeah, the Tarte blush wand, not my favorite. I much preferred when I was doing a side-by-side with the Charlotte. And here, this one from e.l.f., much more pigment in the actual like color as opposed to just all sheen. And when I turn, that's really the big deal. Are you gonna cast gray with all this shimmer or not? And that's kind of what I was finding with the Tarte one, where I do not find that with the e.l.f. one. And they are in very similar shades. Like I have e.l.f. in peach and I have the Tarte one in peach. This one, see how like it just sinks into the skin just a little bit better? Like there are definitely differences here. They're not the same. Like Charlotte just has the ability to really sink into the skin. I will give Charlotte's that. And the thing with these is because they're so shimmery, they're so much of a sheen, they're so metallic, I like half the time when I wear Charlotte's, I would skip the blush. Oh, not the blush. I would skip the highlighter. And because I just don't think that you need that on top of like a shimmery blush. So testing these is gonna be like a really metallic cheek. Now that we're having companies come out with like these dupes, Flower Beauty for example, she doesn't have the blush wand, but Tarte for example, and now e.l.f., like I'm going to love when they come out with their matte versions of these like Charlotte just did. And I would just like much prefer the matte formula just because I do. And like if you're somebody who likes the shimmery blush, that's awesome, but these are very pigmented too. And so sometimes I find a lot of people like with their preferences, when they want something that's a little bit more dewy or like shimmery, that it's not as pigmented a blush, that it's kind of on the lighter side. I think you can get that out of the Charlotte, but I also do think like it has a decent amount of pigmentation. Okay, we are ready to move on into the highlight. Again, this one was the champagne color. The one that I have from Charlotte, unfortunately, is Pillow Talk. So it's a deeper pink shade. That's kind of like the unfortunate part about like what my wands that I already had aren't exactly in the same shades. And the one that I got in peach, I wanted to kind of avoid getting like too pinky of a shade because I'm really preferring orange, like peachy blushes these days. And so for that reason, most of the stuff that I've been buying like in blushes have been like more of a peachy or like a corally shade. So I did not want to pick up one that was like as pink as the Pinkgasm because I'm not reaching for blushes this color anymore. So for that reason, I couldn't do exactly a side-by-side. I much prefer this shade on me than this one. Let's do swatches of these. Yeah. The formula is consistent throughout the e.l.f. wands. Same with the Charlotte. I did pull out a little bit too much on the e.l.f. one. I didn't realize like their products, like for being such a small little applicator, the actual consistency of it, like it goes a long way. And so you don't need that much with these e.l.f. ones. That's awesome. It's just the same consistency in all three of the wands, that this is a little bit thicker and the one from Charlotte just sinks into the skin a little bit better. It's just super velvety soft. It has a little bit more tack to it than the one from e.l.f. Like the e.l.f. one, when you're blending it out, is just so smooth. It doesn't have the same tack that the Charlotte wands do. So you know what, do I want to draw it on? I'm tempted to just kind of pick it up from my hand, but I think we will draw it on and I will just like blend it out with my finger. I think that's kind of how I want to do it. Very different colors, and it is sitting on top of this blush, so because it's also a similar finish, it's going to be hard to tell, but that was it. I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, it's beautiful. It was very easy to blend. It's such a nice formula though. Like overall, These are really, really good. Same thing on this side. Going to dot Charlotte's on and blend in. There's a little bit of difference there. It's a much lighter shade than the one in Pinkgasm. And you know, it has more of like a little bit of a champagne. It's beautiful. It just sinks into the skin so nice. It just glides right on. It sinks into the skin. I've said that multiple times. I really enjoyed both of them though. So let's talk a little bit about like my final thoughts and maybe even which ones I prefer. Okay, so I just went and threw on like a lip oil really quickly, and I kind of thought and sat and thought about which ones I preferred, and it's really hard to say. You guys, it is such a good like nice thing that we've got e.l.f. out here, like honestly making dupes, because most of their stuff is really good quality, and it's great because everything is getting smaller and then everything is becoming more expensive. I cannot say that they are exactly identical. They have a little bit of a different like texture and consistency to them, and when I've been comparing dupes, because I've compared these against, you know, which ones I could against the Tarte, and I've also compared the Charlotte ones like against the Flower Beauty ones, and there's just not the same exact identical shades in each of their lines, and so it's not like you're testing necessarily like apples to apples. There's just a little bit of differences, like even in like, you know, the tone of them. But in terms of like formulation, I can tell that the Charlotte sinks into my skin a little bit better. It's not more blendable. The e.l.f. is super blendable. Like if you guys saw easy formula to work with, it's a little bit thicker. I like the shade on the e.l.f. one better for the contour. I prefer the formula to the other two from Charlotte, both in highlighter and in blush, than I do from the one from e.l.f. because I can see it really emphasizing my texture much more than the side from Charlotte, and I don't usually notice that. Like I don't think I have more texture on the left side than the right side, or I would say that. I just think that it's a much smoother formula from Charlotte. If I were to pick the ones that I would reach for more frequently, just on my normal usage, I would say the contour wins over Charlotte's from e.l.f., but I would say these two win over these ones. Just my personal preference. Now you guys, this is first impressions, so this could easily change. That happens all the time. But if I were on a budget and I couldn't get my hands on these, hands down, these are the best alternative option over Tarte and Flower Beauty right now. So that's kind of it. That's how I feel about it, you guys. I will always do my speed reviews later where I'm going to talk about all the products that I test for the previous month, and these will go in there. So my thoughts may change, and usually only slightly. I do feel like I understand this formula and the shades pretty well at this point, just because they were so good. They were such good quality. I don't think that my thoughts are going to change very much. So that was it. I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you guys are new to my channel, hi, my name is Carrie. I really do wish you consider subscribing if you're not a current subscriber so that we can chat again next time. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.